Welcome to On the Rise. I am Evan Murray, and this is awesome. We're here to talk about all the fun facts of Chinese language music. So when we talk about Chinese languages, do you have any favorite Chinese language artist singers?
I want to say when I first started really listening to it, Khalil Fong was his first or second album. I forget, the Orange Moon one. He just really meshed R&B so well with Chinese lyrics, and it worked so well because I felt like before when I was listening to ballads, I was like, oh, it kind of all sounds very similar. And so, yeah, I think Khalil Fong was like the first one that blew my mind. I was like, oh, shit, like Chinese music can sound like this. And FIR too, their first couple of albums were super cool.
FIR?
Yeah, FIR.
Okay.
And I wouldn't say that I have a favorite. I think it's more like there were songs that were definitely memorable for me. And I guess by proxy that artist, but I'm not one that just really, generally speaking, I've never really been like, I will follow this artist in every song that they put out.
This is my favorite.
Exactly.
This
like
is my favorite.
Yeah, even Celine Dion, like half of the songs I don't care for.
Yeah,
But, I've seen her in concert, and like I just think she has just such a great stage presence. I respect her, but like her music might not necessarily be from A to Z my favorite thing. Right.
Can you share a memorable experience performing in front of a non-Chinese language audience?
Yes. So when I was doing some shows with my French stuff, I would sometimes like put in like a Chinese song, and it was just, I think when the song is good and when you're genuine about it, people feel it. And same thing here. Like last week I had a show and I sang one of my French songs, and I think people didn't understand what the hell I was saying, but
right.
You know, I think if it's genuine and if you're really into the performance, I don't think language is that important.
That's where music transcends,
yes,
right?
Unless people are in a bar and they're looking to party and they can't understand anything and your song doesn't have any beats or whatever. I think that's like the only scenario.
Poetry, like you're just reading French poetry.
Yeah. I think that would be the only time where I'd be like a little bit hesitant about going on stage. I'll be like, ooh, y'all are definitely here to like, you know, get fucked up, and here I am offering not that.
Right.
So, but no, I think music is not like you said, music doesn't really have a language. It really does transcend that.
So you've been living in Taiwan for 3 years.
Two in October, yeah.
2 in October.
But before
2 years in October.
Yes, but before this, I was here for 4 years.
Oh, okay.
The whole thing about my album flopping.
Oh, yeah. I was about to tell you I'm more Taiwanese than you are, but I'm not, because now it's 6 years. So, yeah. So you're here 6 years, right?
Yes.
Okay.
How long have you been here for?
On and off since 2018.
Okay.
Yeah. So because what happened was I was doing business out of here, so I was traveling a lot from here, and of course all my business is in English, and I don't know that much Mandarin, so I'm bashfully ashamed of that, but
it is what it is.
But I'm here to learn. You know. All right, and let's talk about that for a second. So the differences between. So you grew up in a mega center in Canada. Like Montreal is a megatropolis, right? And
second biggest city in Canada. Fun fact, used to be the first one, but then Toronto became the biggest because of like the how do you call it?
GTA. When they included all the.
No. It was because of the referendum to separate Quebec in the 80s.
All the people moved out.
Yeah, all the English-speaking people were like, oh, fuck that. And so they all moved to Toronto. But this could also be an urban myth. I was told this my entire life.
Well,
there's
more to it. I think that there's, because there's still lots of English, well, I mean, even though no signs are in French, like there's still a lot of English-speaking people there. But the other thing is that when you have these kind of referendums, and a lot of people are moving more and more away from the church now too, and the church, like the Catholic Church, really kept people French in Quebec, right?
Yes.
So I mean, the more that people move away from the church and about culture and everything else, they let that stuff go. I think. I mean, for me, like I don't know. I mean, like for me, I have obviously French-speaking relatives, and but there's a weird thing with the Irish there, right? Because so many Irish immigrants came in, and then they were like, and then they francophoned them. You know what I mean? They like got them to speak French as the next generation. And that's a weird thing. Like Point St. Charles was like an Irish ghetto in Griffin that we were talking about. Yeah. So it's weird because all the people that they had to leave their own country, to try to find somewhere else to live because of the famine and everything else. But yeah, a lot of them ended up in the ports of Montreal. And a lot of them also like children that had to be adopted by French families and stuff. Yeah. So like you have a huge like Irish population in Montreal that speak French, which is like, it's strange. So it's
well, I mean, there's also just so many non-French speaking looking people that speak French.
Sure, right.
Because that's one thing that I realized like became part of my identity as soon as I left Quebec was like people think it's like mind-blowing that I speak French, but it's equally true when I meet like an Italian Chinese. Like I was on the plane like last month in Europe, and I was sitting beside this Dutch Chinese girl, and she was speaking Dutch with like the flight attendant, and it just blew my mind. I was like, that's so cool, you're Asian but you speak Dutch. She was like, yeah, and then we started talking. She's like, that's so cool, you speak French fluently. And I was like, oh, I guess that's how. But anyways, so Montreal is kind of a melting pot of cultures, right? Like all my Arab friends also, they speak French.
Right.
Yeah. It's
What about 3 differences between where you live now and when you lived in Montreal? What are 3 differences that you could talk about?
It's hot as balls here. Fuck.
Yeah, it is.
It's so humid. I think the first time I ever landed in Taipei, I remember it was pouring outside. It was in like in May, and I guess that's raining season. Also, let's put a pin in that one. I don't know. I feel like it's always raining here. Who knows?
On and off, yeah.
Exactly.
When it feels like it.
Yeah. Well, so that's the thing. It was raining, and I got off the plane. I was still inside the airport with the AC.
Yeah.
I was looking outside, but I could feel humidity, and I felt like I could feel water on myself. And then as soon as I walked out and the humidity just like it covers you like a blanket, I was like, oh my God, I felt like I was genuinely walking into water. Like that's how.
But that's like Toronto too, though. Toronto feels a lot like
really?
that. Yeah, in the summertime, like when you're around the lake, like you can't get dry in the summertime.
I've never known. Well, I've also never really gone to Toronto in the summer. I think maybe. Not, it wasn't the summer. I've never been to Toronto in the summer.
But the thing is, the humidity here is tropical though.
Yeah,
this is a tropical humidity, right? So we got the weather. That's number one. Like the weather, the biggest difference that, as far as you're concerned right now, is definitely like you're gonna feel it, right? You're gonna feel it. What's another difference?
I think it's the holidays. Like for me, I truly love Christmas and the holiday spirits and like snow and all the fairy lights and what that entails. Like I think it's really beautiful. Like I fucking love that Hallmark bullshit. Like I love that they market it just because I love looking at Christmas decorations, and I think it's it genuinely gives me joy. Like I love when it starts snowing and everything's covered with like a white blanket. I'm really, really into the blanket thing.
You're really Canadian.
But here, it's not. First of all, there's no snow.
Yeah.
Also, there's no. There is like a certain knowledge of Christmas, but it's more of like like from watching movies and like the whole marketing opportunities that people like.
Doesn't that give you some insight though as well? Like when you see the way Christmas is like propagated in other places that aren't particularly Christian, you start to say, oh yeah, this is just a business.
It is absolutely just a business, but I think
the spirit you're talking about.
Yeah, it's the spirit for like when you're in Canada, like you get those days off. It's it's winter break. Everyone has that time off. Everyone comes together and like celebrates and does something, whether it's parties or like gift exchange or whatever. And here it's like people are just doing it out of like, oh shit, it's Christmas, maybe we should do something. But it's not really just because like you're really looking forward to it. I don't know. There's there's a difference in mentality. I think
I know what you're talking about because it's a feeling.
Yeah.
Right. That's why it's hard to articulate because it's something that you feel inside of yourself.
I'm also super biased because my birthday is Boxing Day, so it's the day after Christmas.
Ooh,
and so
that's complicated.
Yeah, so for me, it's just more like when I'm here, I'm like, I don't even get the day. Like it's not even the holiday time. Like, what is? You know what I mean? Like it just, I feel like I'm extra sensitive to it. Who knows? Maybe I'm just being dramatic.
Absolutely, but we like that. We like that on that show. We like drama. So we got the weather and we got the seasonal affliction. Right? There's just that difference.
Yes.
And what about number 3? What's another big difference between Montreal and Taipei?
I guess food.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean,
you got so sad. You were like, yeah.
Well, it's like, all right, let's just talk about that's really, really. I mean,
it is obvious, but I feel like it Yes, it's obvious, but you don't
you don't understand how big the difference is until you live it.
Exactly,
right? Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then like, you know, just spending like the equivalent of like 6 Canadian dollars for a little bit of butter.
Yeah.
Or, you know, like not being able to find like smoked meat that doesn't like
Smoked meat. Well, I mean,
the bank.
everything would be astronomically expensive
exactly
in Canada.
like it's accessible
Yes,
here,
yes.
but it's still like you would feel like you have to sell your kidney. Fun fact, sells for 10 grand in the Iranian black market.
Oh my
kidney.
God.
I don't know.
Okay,
why
well,
I know
I'm
this.
not. I'm running away. No,
You have 2, so it's fine.
But when we talk about the food thing, because I was just in Singapore like two weeks ago, and the Singapore ringgit is very equal to the Canadian dollar.
Yes.
And I was just, you know, like I hadn't been out of Taiwan now for, I don't know what, like 2.5 years or something. You know what I mean?
Why? No, because I really So here's the thing in Chinese is that no matter how aware that people are aware that everyone knows that there's COVID, like everybody, who the fuck doesn't know there's COVID?
Yeah.
If you're having a conversation in Chinese, they're gonna add, because of the pandemic, like everyone's gonna add this sentence. And it's like, we know, everybody fucking knows there's COVID. But everyone's gonna be like, 因为疫情的关系. Yes, no, we know. It's fine. It's fine. But no, it just gets added constantly into every conversation. Anyways,
it's mobile, right? It's like they just
it's
smuggle
like saying
it.
like.
Right. Yeah. There you go.
But I don't know. It's just like, it's such a big amount for just the word like. Anyways.
All right. What about, so we know the differences, and let's go back to Canada for a second. Born and raised.
I didn't let you finish. You have to get back to
the
Canada.
food.
Yes.
The food, I couldn't believe how astronomically expensive the food in Singapore was.
But Singapore is very expensive though.
Yeah, but I mean, okay, do you know this? Here's a fun fact. And actually, my friend's an economist, and he actually verified this for me. But one thing I found from traveling so much is that if I ever really want to know the price of the index of a country, what I'll do is I'll look at the price of a Big Mac meal. Because if you look at the price of a Big Mac meal anywhere in the world, like even though it's the same thing, you got a burger, French fries, and a Coke or whatever drink you have, the price index is going to give you a guidance system of that country. Right, at the price index of the country. So say in Taiwan, the price of a Big Mac meal is like 150 or something. So that's like, what is that, like 6 Canadian dollars, right? 7 Canadian dollars, something like that. Yeah. But in Singapore, it's like, well, I mean, now I'm playing with, now my head's getting all screwed up. But anyways, it was like about 400 NTD. So that the thing is, that would be closer to like $15, $16.
Yeah.
And then you can literally see that across the board for everything else. Right, I mean, like you can use, and the thing was, I was telling this to my friend, and he works for like this Rutherford's magazine or Reuters or something. I can't. Yeah, and he's like
RUTR, something
like that.
Okay.
They have a station here in Taiwan, and he's like, "Hey, have you ever looked at this?" And he showed me the Big Mac price index. And I was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, it exists. Look." And I was like, "Oh," I thought I was just smart. Yeah. I thought I figured something out.
That's really 2 things about that. First of all, super interesting. Second of all, kind of insane that this American restaurant chain basically just infiltrated every fucking place.
The world.
That's insane. Except for Russia now.
Yeah, right. But yeah, they created their own. I follow a vlogger who moved into Georgia. I wish I could remember his name because he's such a cool guy, and he's just totally amped. And he goes through all this stuff that's changing in Russia all the time. And one of them is like their new McDonald's. It's not McDonald's; they replaced it. I can't even remember what it's called. But anyways, that was really interesting. I watched the whole thing on he had a girl walk around with a cell phone, like kind of like eating in the restaurant, talking to him and stuff like that. And he's like, "So what does it taste like?" It's like, "Are those fries, are they any good?" That kind of thing. And it just equaled out that it's basically the exact same thing. They just changed they just threw out the branding.
Yeah.
Junos.
Yes.
So now we're back in Canada.
Yes.
Oh, Canada. All right.
La terre de nos aïeux.
So you know all about the Junos.
Yes. Of course. Have I ever watched them? Absolutely not.
Yeah, really? Okay, talk to me about that. Talk to me about the Junos.
So I think the Junos is super cool in terms of celebration of, like you said, like despite the size of the Canadian population, like we still managed to like create so many I say we like I had anything to do with it.
It's us. It's us.
It's us. Just like how you came up with the Big Mac Index.
Yeah.
No, I think it's really, really cool to be able to like celebrate and visualize just how much impact we do have as Canadians around the world. Especially, I guess, like, you know, a lot of people like assume this artist might be American, but in reality, they're Canadian. And I think it also celebrates. It kind of attempts at reconciliating the French music side by nominating once in a while like Quebec artists and then putting them in the Junos, and then everyone's like, derp, who are you?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of tokenism going on there with the French, right? Because it's not a shared thing. It's not.
I mean, like French have like Quebec has like La Disque, which is like just like the French music scene. So but all this to say, no, I think it's a really cool concept. I think any sort of award show is cool in concept, in the sense where we want to celebrate people.
Right.
But I think award shows in general are also just kind of full of bullshit, in the sense where why do we have to put a score, or why do we have to give out prize for something that's so subjective, right? Right,
because subjection in the fact of like what qualifies
as good or be nominated.
Right, and who's to say, and even the people that are judges, like, you know, the thing, like I was sent my thing. I have to do the East Coast Music Awards. I'm a juror. I don't know if I'm allowed to tell anybody that, but anyways, like I'm a juror on that, and I do, like, I go through the artists and I feel bad for them, and I just feel like, you know, it's this big competition. Everyone's putting their heart on the line, and it's like, but what about this? This is the other thing I want to talk about. So they give this little, excuse me. So they give this little portion to the French, right? But they don't give any portions to anybody else. So this is something strange and weird, is that, like, you know, in Toronto, well, in Toronto, you know, it was announced that Mandarin's the second most spoken language in Toronto now.
That's crazy.
So there's English and Mandarin, and then maybe Punjab, and then maybe French, and I don't know.
That's crazy.
And then in Vancouver, 1 in 5 people speak a Chinese language. So 20% of Vancouver is, you know, people are speaking Chinese languages.
I've never been to Vancouver, actually.
See, that's a weird thing, because, like, you know what? I've spent like 0 time there. I've driven through the city like once, and I've been to Vancouver Island like for like weeks. I went camping all over the place there. But that's something, like, I think when you live in so like Eastern Canadians, they love Montreal, right? So like Newfoundlanders and PEI, and they just think Montreal is like the greatest thing that ever happened.
I agree with them.
And and the other thing is, so what happens is you have this weird thing where, like, everyone goes to Toronto, right? But then the thing is, it's only like Western Canadians that go to Vancouver, and like the Far East Canadians stay around, you know. And I don't know if that's because, like, it's just so ridiculously expensive to fly inside of Canada, and no one wants to drive for 5 days.
Yeah.
But there is that thing. I think there's that thing, you know. Like, I think Vancouver's like very, very Western, right? It's a very Western.
I think so. Like, I've never really had the want to go to Vancouver. And like, people, you know, like, being Canadian, people are like, oh my God, like, when you're outside of Canada, like, I don't think people understand just how big Canada is.
Yeah.
Like, the furthest west I've been is Toronto, which is still considered East Coast.
Oh my God, that's the furthest west you've been in Canada?
Yeah. But wait, to be fair, I've done PEI, I've done I've done New Brunswick and Nova Scotia.
You've never been on the prairies?
No.
You've never seen the Rocky Mountains?
No.
Banff,
I really want to
Jasper.
Go to Banff. I really, really, really want to go to Banff.
We'll have to set up shows for you in Western Canada, because
that sounds amazing.
You'll have to, you'd have to do that. That's like I feel so Canadian when I'm in the West. I feel so Canadian. Like, if you go to, here's a weird thing about, like, Saskatchewan, okay?
Okay.
So, like, Saskatchewan is just like, you know, flat land forever, you know, watch your dog run away for 3 days. Or you never lose your dog, because 3 days you can still see him running away. There's some joke like that. And, you know, Regina was actually set to be, like, they have the biggest provincial building there, right? It's gigantic. Because
what do you mean a provincial building?
Like you know, like, each province has their own provincial government building, you know, like where the assembly is, or whatever, right? Okay. So, like, you know, Edmonton's the capital of Alberta, and Quebec City is the capital. Yes. Yeah, blah blah blah. Ottawa, no, not Ottawa. Toronto is the capital of
Ontario? Really?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Isn't it?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I thought Ottawa was just capital of
St. John's is the capital of Newfoundland. I know that.
Yes.
Okay, but so anyways, Victoria is the capital of BC.
Yes.
And but what I'm saying
Halifax
here is
is of New Brunswick.
Yeah.
Let's keep it going.
Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia. Fredericton is the capital of New Brunswick.
No.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna dig a hole in that.
We're just pretending to be Canadian right now because I don't know all of it either, which is terrible. But so, anyways, they built. If you ever get to Regina, it's like so small, right? Like 200,000 people live, 150,000 people live there, something like that. It's so small.
I don't know. I always say like my joke for that is just like there's 5 people live in Saskatchewan. I've met one, and I was like, "You're one of the 5 people." I think I'm so funny when I say that, and I think he doesn't appreciate it. But whatever.
But they really thought, like the settlers really thought that Regina was going to be like the center of Canada.
Really?
They really thought that. So they built a ginormous Parliament building. It's really super. It's something beautiful to see. It's actually crazy. But yeah, because they had the rivers and then they had the prairie. So they're like, look, we have the water systems that go through here, and we can grow food that would feed the whole world 10 times over again right around our area. What they didn't count on though is like how bad the winters are, right? Like no one's gonna survive that. But
that's so the guy from Saskatchewan that I met in Montreal, he was telling me that in the wintertime, like he has to like blow torch under his car to get it started because it will just not start. Like when it gets really bad and gets icy, like he has to literally just set it on fire for. You
should try to talk him into using a garage or maybe a like a.
He could have been bullshitting.
Yeah, I think he was. I think he had a little bit of a laugh there, but
damn it.
But this is the interesting thing about Canadians. There's different types of Canadians. That's what's fun about Canada, right? Like if you come from Saskatchewan, like people are going to know it. If you come from Montreal, people are going to know it. If you come from Newfoundland, they're going to know it. There's these different types of these personalities, right? That kind of shine through. Like it's like this. I
think this is true from like Torontoians. I think
Torontonians.
Toronto. Is that the adjective? Torontonians.
Let's go with it.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Okay, but so what do you think would happen in the Junos if they included more languages? Like, what do you think about that? What if there was a Chinese language music award?
That'd be dope. Is this like your what's the word?
Segue
to the Jade Music Festival? I think it'd be super cool. I think it would be a real reflection of the Canadian population because it's like you said, like that. Also, those are some crazy stats. Like second biggest spoken language is Mandarin Chinese in Toronto.
And what we have to think about as Canadians, like one of the things we're talking about, how the Junos are like inclusive to Canada.
Yes.
Right? And so many Canadian artists are inclusive into Canada, not breaking out of it. Like even like a band like the Tragically Hip, which is known to be like, Canadiana or whatever.
I didn't know that.
Well, they're just like, so epic. Like they did the whole stadium tour. Like they, before the guy died, he died of brain cancer, the singer. But they played like sold out shows in every stadium in every Canadian city, before he died.
I just know of the name, to be honest.
Yeah. But I mean, that's rock and roll. But the thing is, like, it's just that if you're outside of Canada, like, you don't know that. But one of the things is, I think that if we include other languages, per se, Chinese languages, I think people from outside of Canada might start seeing more Canadian artists. What do you think about that?
I think that's accurate. There's, I can't remember his name. There's this guy that blew up on TikTok, and he's Canadian Indian. And I think he's singing in Hindi. I can't remember. And it blew up. And then he like made a song and it went viral. And
that's happening a lot right now, actually. Like,
really?
Punjab rappers and like
from Canada.
Yeah, and they're getting huge in India, like huge.
But I think that would be literally the best example of what you just said. Like, if we had, like a spotlight on these languages, then the audience from the country of origin or wherever they also speak these languages will look and be like, oh shit, like
if they keep their Canadian identity. So that's the other complicated aspect. Like we're talking to lots of artists that had to leave Canada in order to pursue their music career to a higher level because of the fact that there wasn't a Chinese language space inside of Canada for them.
Yeah.
And then the thing is that Canada loses out on that, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to talk to the Canadian government about. We're like, hey, like, hold on to your assets, you know, retain your assets, Canada. So why did you become a musician? What happened? Did you get hit by lightning? Did you?
Because I suck at math.
Yeah.
No, but I actually do suck at math. Fun fact, so I used to, like, every Saturday as a kid, I had to go to Chinese school, and that included Chinese math. So it would be like, if you're in 3rd grade, what you were learning was like, you know, like 6th grade material in Canadian school, but it was 3rd grade in China.
Really?
So like the material was like way advanced, and like, first of all, I hate math.
Yeah.
Second of all, I was like, this is way too hard. And then it got to the point where, like, at some point the teacher got so fed up with me, she threw like a chalk at me. And
at you?
Yeah.
Who would throw chalk at you?
I was also speaking a lot in class, and she was like, Sophie, shut up. And I was like, meh. Anyways, all this to say, there was this one test where everyone, like, she was like, oh, so in this exam, everybody got over 90, but the average is 80 because Sophie got 30%. And I was like, oh, well, this is the end of my anything related to math.
And then everyone just looks at you, right? Like,
yeah, but I think everyone was also like, not surprised.
oh, okay.
So all this to say, why did I pursue music? Because I come from a family where my dad was very, very musical. He self-taught himself how to play flute, how to sing.
How to play flute?
Yeah,
self-taught.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Like the Chinese flute.
Okay.
How to play erhu, which is like the 2-string.
Okay, the bow. Yeah. Yeah.
And he self-taught himself how to sing. My dad was very, very gifted as a vocalist. Like surprisingly shocking. Unfortunately, he never grew up like he grew up in, you know, like post communist, you know? So like he never had the opportunity really to explore, I think. And I think it was just very fun to be able to grow up in a very, very musical environment, because it was something that he just loved so much. And so yeah, like my sister and I, from a very young age. Also, there's a stereotype of when you're, you know, Asian American, you send your kids to learn piano or violin from a very young age. Okay. So there was that partially. So I learned piano from a very young age. Hated it. It was terrible.
Can you still play today?
I can still play, but the only time I liked it was when I could play pop songs. So I would make my parents buy, like, you know, like
bop.
What is that?
Sorry.
No, the first one I played was a Mandy Moore song.
Okay.
After like just doing this gradually, just also realizing that I kind of just hated, I was good at school except for math, but I genuinely disliked everything I was doing except for when I was doing music. And I think my parents, coming from a background where they couldn't really explore, especially my dad, like his musical gifts. Yeah. I think he was just very, very happy and very supportive of me doing that. So I think my sister and I were actually very lucky from a young age that our parents were not like, you have to be doctors or lawyers and you have to make money. I mean, now my mom, she says a very funny thing. She's like, oh, you know, like, I think it's, my friends always tell me like, oh, you know, your daughters don't make a lot of money, but I think it's really great because although you guys don't make a lot of money, you create stuff and that's beautiful and irreplaceable. And I'm like, Mom, you're kind of like complimenting me and also insulting me at the very same time. Yeah, so I think
that's the Canadian in her doing the passive aggressive stuff, right?
Yeah, I guess so. And then saying sorry, eh?
yeah, sorry about that. Yeah.
No, so I think I just kind of I was very encouraged to do music, and then it got to a point where I was also just like, okay, like I'm clearly not gonna do anything else, so you guys are gonna have to be okay with it. And they were like, sure.
So you would like what it sounds like. It sounds like there wasn't a choice here. This was like a pathway that unfolded, right?
Yeah,
like
basically. I mean, my parents never truly pushed me into it. They were just very supportive. And I think they were also like, they never pushed me to do anything else either. So I think that's kind of why it got paved into like, well, I'm just going to do music. Like I like doing
Right, because I was going to ask you what would you be doing if you weren't a musician, but I don't think that's even a plausible question.
I
right?
thought about being a flight attendant at some point because I feel like it's very like it's a plus that I can speak 3 languages.
Oh yeah,
and also
huge.
You get to travel and blah blah.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I will probably be miserable.
Right.
But when I went back to Canada after my album flop, so I worked in a tech company. And that was a music tech company. But then I like started self-learning, teaching myself how to become like a developer a little bit. And I was like, oh, I could do this. Like I'm a nerd. I'm pretty good at this. And then it also got to the point where I was like, no, if I do this like professionally, I will also be miserable. So I'm just going to keep fighting for music until I lose all passion.
And that's it, folks. Please continue to listen to the next parts or continue to the next episode. Please don't forget to hit subscribe and follow On the Rise. This is awesome.